Welcome into SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. John, we have a Heisman Trophy winner. It is Jayden Daniels of LSU, the man that you told me for weeks now was going to win. I was skeptical for a time because LSU's record, but ultimately Daniels' individual performance was so good, Heisman voters could not deny it. I think it also helped him that Bo Nix and Oregon lost in the Pac 12 championship game. We will unpack the Heisman standings today. Along with that, we're going to tell you who's going to win the 2024 Heisman Trophy. So, John, have you borrowed the crystal ball that the College Football Playoff Selection Committee used to fill out their playoff field so we can take a look ahead to who's going to win the Heisman next year?
No, I discarded their crystal ball and got me one of my own. I feel more
Oh,
comfortable with that. Yeah.
okay. So you can just
It's
pick
got
those
yeah,
magic
it's got a
devices
little
up anywhere.
it's got a little Florida State sticker on it too.
Oh, it does. Ah,
Yeah,
you
my
must have got a
crystal.
different one than the playoff committee.
Yeah. Uh no, there are a lot of one of the things I think when you look at Heisman now, you got to look at transfers. Best
No doubt.
transfer going to the best place.
Yeah, and we saw that in the Heisman voting this year, not only in who won the award in Jayden Daniels, but also in fellow finalist Michael Penix and Bo Nix. I mean, it was a transfer party in New York, and I don't really knock that. How comfortable do you feel, John, when it comes time to voting for guys on your ballot that are transfers? I assume no hesitation on your end either.
No, it was mine was Jay Daniels, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix, 1, 2, 3, all transfer quarterbacks. And
Okay.
I think that's the era in which we live and just adjust to it. We see quarterbacks making moves, making smart moves. You want your quarterback to be able to make good decisions. And that those are three examples of quarterbacks who made really good decisions that impacted their careers. Who knows how things would have turned out for Jayden Daniels if he'd have stayed at Arizona State? But I don't think he would have won the Heisman.
Yeah, I had Daniels atop my ballot as well. I went into conference championship weekend with Daniels as my number one, but I was kind of reserving judgment until I saw how Bo Nix in particular played on conference championship weekend. I thought he was fine, but not enough to make me move off that position. So I went Daniels one, as you did. I had Bo Nix two, and when it comes to Heisman voting, I sort of have a stance of you do what you want with your ballot. I traditionally don't complain a lot about how a particular Heisman voter votes, and I'll do what I want with my ballot. And historically, over the years, I use that third spot on my ballot to vote for um, the best player whom I liked watching the most throughout that season. A couple years ago, I went with Matt Corral from Ole Miss. Last year, I went with Max Duggins from TCU on the three line. And this year, I went with whom I thought was the best running back in the nation. Enjoyed watching him play, watching him run all season long. I went with Missouri's Cody Schrader on the number three line. He finished eighth in the voting, was not a Heisman finalist. So we both had Daniels at number one. We both had Nix on our ballot. You went with Penix with your other spot. I went with Schrader. I don't have an argument with Penix. I thought if I would have went with a third quarterback on my ballot and done the all quarterback ballot as you did, I also would have went with Penix in my third spot.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with Schrader, and I really did like watching him play this year. I saw a lot of Missouri games. He's the epitome of what you want in a running back. He makes tough yards, and his speed is underrated. I saw him pull away from secondaries this season on some long runs and turning the corner. A lot of times I thought, well, he won't quite make it around the edge, and he did, and turned what looked like a 6, 7 yard gain into maybe a 36-yard gain. I really like him. He's also a really good receiver coming out of the backfield. Uh, does he have another? He's done eligibility wise, isn't he?
He's done. Yes, I believe
Yeah,
this was it for him.
you know, Missouri could use him again. I don't know what that. I didn't see much depth there at running back, and that's another uh, attribute he had was durability. I mean,
Mhm.
let's face it, they would put Nathan Pete in there some to spell him, but it was but the running game was mostly Cody Schrader. They better search hard in that transfer portal and see if they can find someone from Truman State again.
No, yeah, no doubt. They didn't go to Truman, but they actually did just add a commitment. I believe it was earlier this week from Georgia State's your guys. I know how you like Georgia State. Their running back Marcus Carroll, excuse me, rushed for over 1,300 yards this year. So it wasn't quite Cody Schrader good. Schrader hit nearly the 1,500 mark. He'll go across 1,500 in the bowl game, but yeah, Marcus Carroll from Georgia State had a really nice year in
Is
this
this his
Sun Belt.
second transfer?
Probably he's a veteran guy. I know.
Okay.
I think he's got 1 year. No, he looks like he spent his whole career at
Okay.
Georgia State up to this point. But I think he's got one more year left in him. So Missouri going back to the transfer lane to try to keep the running back thing going. So all right, so there are ballots for this year, John. Now it's time to turn the page because we think the voters got it right. So there's nothing to argue with at Jayden Daniels. So now let's tell folks who's going to win the Heisman next year. So I know our crystal balls got a few images floating around in there. We can't quite identify who's definitely going to win, but we got a pretty good idea of who's headed to New York next year. So who's your crystal ball identifying right out of the gates here?
Well, I've got a lot of guys in that crystal ball right now. Probably coming most into focus is Dylan Gabriel.
Mm.
I thought he was one of the top quarterbacks in the country this season. Transferred now to Oregon, so he goes from one explosive offense to another, and going from Oklahoma to Oregon. I like everything about him. He also has that seemingly has that intangible attribute to make a play when it's most needed. He runs hard. He's had some injury issues, but it hasn't phased the way he runs. I mean, he runs. He'll take on a tackler when he is needed. It's not stupid or reckless running, but and he's a very accurate passer. I love him in that Oregon offense. He was great at Oklahoma's offense. I don't quite understand why Oklahoma would want him to depart, and maybe it didn't, but that's it's an
Yeah,
interesting situation.
it was hard to interpret Brent Venables' comments there. Of course, Gabriel was in the portal at that point. You're trying to say whatever the best thing is to make it look for your heir apparent, Jaxson Arnold, at that point. But yeah, it didn't sound like Venables was all that sad to see Gabriel go. It's such a fine line to walk because if Gabriel decides, as he did, he wants to come back for one more season, and then you got this 5-star behind him in Jaxson Arnold, who you can get a couple years out of. It's like, man, you'd probably love to have Gabriel for one more, but then who's your quarterback in 2025? Like, I think Oklahoma's hope is they have Jaxson Arnold as their star quarterback for 2 years. So if you keep Gabriel for one more, you might risk losing Arnold, and then you don't have your solution in 2025. Now, I know, John, you like to live in the moment, so I suspect you would not be worrying so much about 2025 if you could get another year out of Dylan Gabriel. But I do see how this is a tough balancing act. When you have a 5-star sitting waiting in the wings, who's your quarterback of the future, who you don't want to lose.
Blake, I think that's old school thinking. I don't like you said. I think right now when you're selecting a quarterback, who's the best guy right now? That's what you go with. You worry about 2025 after the 24 season. But like I said about what is there not to like about Dylan Gabriel? Anybody that watched him in that Texas game, I mean, that was pretty stellar what he did in that game, and he pulled that game out at the end with a clutch throw in the end zone. I just really like him. I think that's, and I don't know, maybe surely Oklahoma could pay him enough. And I bet he got $2 million to go to Oregon. I would just go when you look at all the portals in all the portals, all the quarterbacks in the transfer portal. I mean, that's not going to change next year. You're going to have a pick of a lot of high quality quarterbacks. We just saw where Riley Leonard of Duke committed to Notre Dame. Notre Dame this past season had Sam Hartman from Wake Forest. Uh, that's the way to play the game now, and those guys don't seem to have any trouble adjusting to a new system. So that's the way I would go. But who knows? Maybe things will work out fine with Oklahoma, but I'd be betting on Oregon right now.
Yeah, and I wonder from Gabriel's perspective, John, if when Jeff Lebby left there, an offensive coordinator who he had been with at UCF and then he'd been with at Oklahoma, Lebby left to become the head coach at Mississippi State. Of course, I wonder if Gabriel thought, okay, it's time to move on because the guy I've been with and had so much success with is out of here, and if I wonder if he would be back. I guess I'm saying if Lebby had not left. Um, I like starting the conversation with Gabriel for a couple reasons. One, as you mentioned, he's a dual threat guy. Those dual threat quarterbacks tend to have I think, a little bit of an extra advantage when it comes to winning the Heisman. Doesn't mean you have to be a dual threat guy. If you have like a season like Joe Burrow did back in 2019 or Bryce Young a couple years ago, you can win the Heisman without running for a bunch of yards, but it does help you, I think, to have that running ability. Gabriel has it. He had over 4,000 yards of total offense this year. And another reason is I think it's hard to win the Heisman when you were a relative unknown coming into the season. Even if you have a great year in a particular year, it helps so much if going into the season, you're considered a guy to watch. And I think with Gabriel, yes, he didn't finish in the top 10 of Heisman voting this year, but he will come into next year on the shortest of short lists to win this award because of what he did at Texas. If there had been against Texas, if there had been a midseason Heisman, I think Gabriel would have been at least a finalist for New York, right? Like if we would have stopped the voting after, I don't know, 7-8 weeks of the season, he would have been a finalist. And I do think that helps the fact that he got some buzz in the year heading into what we're talking about, him winning the award. It's so hard to come out of nowhere and win this thing.
Yeah, you're right. He played great in a very high profile game. I watched that game, and my thought after it was Dylan Gabriel is going to win the Heisman. I didn't know. Again, a lot of voters, and I won't judge them, but they do go a lot on how the team does. The team had a couple of close losses to underdogs. Perhaps things would have worked out differently. I still think Jayden Daniels, his numbers far surpassed everybody, but I do really like Dylan Gabriel's chances going into next season. And you mentioned Bo Nix. He's a very similar quarterback to Bo Nix. Bo Nix can run. I agree with you. I like the dual threat guys. And even though Bryce Young and Joe Burrow, Heisman winners, weren't classic dual threat guys, they ran when needed. They
That's a good
made
point.
big plays
Yeah.
on the run, and that's something I really look for. Is a guy that can make it when everything breaks down. Can they scramble for 15 yards and a first down? We saw Bryce Young do that, and we saw Joe Burrow do that in big games.
Yeah, that's a good point, John. They weren't exactly statues in the pocket, even though they weren't dual threats to the extent of a Jayden Daniels, and neither is Gabriel. He's certainly a pass first type of guy who can run it. Uh, Speaking of dual threat quarterbacks, I got one for you, John. See if you like this one. Jalen Milroe played so well in the second half of the season. He finished all the way at number 6, and number 6 in Heisman voting this year. I think he's going to be, at the very least, a finalist next year. I think he could win this award, become the second Alabama quarterback to win it behind Bryce Young. Milroe, another guy who can beat you with his arm or his legs. An even better runner, I think, than Dylan Gabriel. Throws a great deep ball, and I think he progressed this season as sort of a down to down passer. There was a point in this year around week 4, week 5, where Alabama's offense was basically chuck it deep with Milroe, which again he's good at, or B, let him run. Well, the Alabama offense is still largely that, but in between, the end of September and now, he's progressed some as an every down passer. I mean, I think about that fourth down completion he made in the SEC championship. Was it a completion? Was it an incompletion? A little controversial there, but it was a great throw. He's got a strong arm, and I think he only gets better next season. He'll presumably be in another year with Tommy Rees in that system. So I think he's got to be among the preseason favorites for the award next year.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, and he reminded me so much at the end of the year. I mentioned this before, but Vince Young at Texas when he led the Longhorns to the 2005 national championship and practically beat Southern California single-handed. And so they have something in common. Those two. Vince Young brought it into the USC dynasty, going for 3 national titles in a row. Pulled it out for Texas in the last minute. And then we saw Jalen Milroe take down Georgia with its 29-game winning streak. So both guys have epic wins in their, in their repertoire. I really, he made the Georgia game going into next season. I mean, that's going to loom large. I mean, that's one of those memorable games. So you're looking for some Heisman impetus. He has it going into next season, as you said. And the play that stood out for me was when he made that little shovel pass in the middle of the field. A crucial play. That ability to ad lib, improvise in clutch moments. So yeah, I really like his chances. I think Alabama could upgrade its receiving core still, and maybe upgrade its running back core too. But think about it: how far he has come. In the third game, he was Alabama's number 3 quarterback against South Florida. Didn't even play. And then at the end of the year, as you pointed out, he's number 6 in the Heisman vote.
And I also look at Alabama's schedule, John. He's going to have so many opportunities for quote unquote Heisman moments, those big plays and big games that attract the attention of voters. I mean, Alabama in week 3 is at Wisconsin. Then in week 5, they're hosting Georgia. They go to LSU. They go to Oklahoma. I mean, it's a it's a bear of a schedule for Alabama this coming season. They usually play a pretty tough, one of the tougher schedules of the nation. Well, I think it's only getting tougher next year. I mean, just those 4 games I mentioned, the Big Ten clash with Wisconsin, and then Georgia, LSU on the road, Oklahoma on the road. Of course, the Iron Bowl always has a lot of eyeballs on it. I just think he's going to have a lot of chances for the quote unquote Heisman moments.
Yeah, I agree. And that's so important because even if you don't play a schedule, if you're in the college football's biggest regular season game, one of its biggest regular season games, that's your chance to win a Heisman. As Tennessee fans can recall from 1997, Charles Woodson of Michigan, the cornerback, a big game against Ohio State and beat out Peyton Manning for the trophy.
Yeah, no controversy about that in
None at
Knoxville, right?
all. No.
All right, who's next on your list, John? You got another quarterback, or we dipping down to some non-quarterbacks?
Well, I still got several guys I like a lot, but I'll throw a kind of a long shot in there
All
because I
right.
don't know how this is going to pan out. But Cam Ward of Washington State, if he lands at Ohio State, I've seen the numbers he's put up there at Washington State. You get him in a high profile program, talent all around him. He could make a really strong run. I know he doesn't have a lot. He doesn't have that much publicity going into the season, but if you watch the Pac-12 like I do, he's been a really productive quarterback in a league full of productive quarterbacks. So, and he's a dual threat guy. He can run when needed. He's a pass first guy, but as a kind of a outside pick, I would think about him.
Yeah, that's a good long shot one. As we record this, he has not landed at a program. Some of the other names being reported as possible destinations: Florida State, Miami. I mean, these are all programs. You mentioned Ohio State, which needs a new quarterback with Kyle McCord in the transfer portal. These are all places where if he landed at any of those schools, he could immediately be in the spotlight. And as you say, I don't know that he's like on the tip of the tongue with a lot of Heisman voters right now. If you watched the Pac 12 to any degree, you're familiar with his game. You know, he's a good quarterback. I don't know that he has quite the same buzz as some of the others, but he could quickly get it based on, the blue blood program that he's likely to end up with. I don't know which program, but I think he's going to wind up at some good school that needs a new starting quarterback, which all those schools that we mentioned do. So I think that's a good long shot one. Um, Another one that I feel like is, I guess, kind of mainstream, John. Carson Beck, despite the fact that I was tapping the drum for him at different points this season, it seemed like no one was listening to my tapping. And ultimately, Carson did not end up on my ballot. Um, Again, I think that was one of the situations. If my ballot was due about, say, week 10, I think I could have been persuaded to vote for him. I thought he was so efficient on third downs, one of the best third down passers in the country this year. But and it's never about one game, but when you're on the borderline of a ballot and you go out with just sort of a shrug of the shoulders, I didn't think he was at his best against Alabama in the SEC championship game. He wasn't strong enough for Georgia to win that game, although there was a lot of reasons why Georgia didn't win that game. So ultimately, I didn't have him on my ballot. A lot of Heisman voters must have felt the same way. He didn't finish in the top 10. However, coming back next year, assuming he does, which it seems like it's pointing in that direction, I think he would be a guy with a lot of attention on him, a second-year starter at Georgia, in the way that Stetson Bennett got more Heisman buzz as a second-year player, and Bennett's production improved in his second season, winning the national championship with Georgia too. Plus, I think the narrative is there, like a Georgia redemption tour, right? I mean, Heisman voters always love a player with a narrative. Georgia's got the narrative. Their quarterback certainly would have that narrative. So Carson Beck would be on my short list as well.
Yeah, I thought the thing about Carson Beck, he was extremely efficient. I thought he was hurt in that SEC game by a supporting cast in that Brock Bowers, best tight end in the country, one of the best players in the country, was not at 100%. He just wasn't at full speed after undergoing ankle surgery. You could see that. If you watched Georgia play all season, watched him play for 3 years now, you know that wasn't Brock Bowers at his very best. And also, Lad McConkey was not at his best. He's been battling injuries, been in and out of the lineup. Those are Georgia's two playmakers in the receiving corps. And I thought without them, that really limits what Carson Beck does best. He can get the ball to his playmakers. He's very adept at that, and he can thread the needle on passes, and that's so important in throwing the ball to Bowers. If you get the ball anywhere close to him, he'll probably catch it. And so I thought that hurt him in that game. And it also hurt him, and this will hurt going into the next season, in that when you talk about the SEC championship game, you don't talk about Carson Beck. Your quarterback of conversation, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be Jalen Milroe. So that would hurt him.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think I like a couple of the names we mentioned out off the jump, Jalen Milroe and Dylan Gabriel. I probably like their chances even more than Beck. But if I had to sort of take a safe bet to make it to the finalist stage next year, I feel pretty strong that Beck could be among the top 4. I don't know if he wins it, but I think he's going to appear on a lot of ballots next season. All right, we got 4 names out there. John, how about another one?
Okay, I'll stay out west and go with a guy who's not another non-high profile guy in Arizona. I watched Arizona play quite a bit, more so than Washington State. And I thought it was at times I thought, man, this is definitely a top 10 team. It struggled early in the year, but Noah Fafita, I may be mispronouncing that name.
I think you nailed it.
Okay, well, you're the expert on pronunciation, so I will yield
Of course.
to you on those. But I mean, he was so accurate, and that offense was really humming all year long. So he's going to put up really big numbers, and there's sort of it's hard for more than one guy, I think, in the conference to emerge sometimes. So um, some of those departures might help him, but he'll also have to compete with Dylan Gabriel of Oregon. So that may work against him. And I haven't seen his name in the transfer portal, which is great news for Arizona.
Well, Arizona will be Big 12 next year, and
That's
Oregon will
true.
be Big 10. So, how do you think that affects things, the new conferences these guys are going to wind up in?
Yeah, I forgot about that with Arizona switching over. I think he will excel in that league too. I don't see defenses in either conference being so great. So I think he could do well. It's kind of a wide open game in the Big 12, just as it was in the Pac 12. I think the defenses have gotten better in those conferences, but still, I think of them as offensive leagues. So I don't know what I haven't looked at Arizona's schedule for next year, but he played well against some good teams. So I think he'll be okay in that regard.
All right, I'll give you 3 more out the door here, John, and see which of these 3 maybe you think has the best shot. How about 2 quarterbacks and a running back? We're all quarterbacks so far for good reason, right? Quarterback usually wins the Heisman, but we'll throw one out there that's not a quarterback just to make things interesting. So my 2 quarterbacks are Quinn Ewers of Texas, a known commodity, guy who's going to be in the SEC next year. He's in the college football playoff this year. One year not supposed to affect the other in Heisman voting, but we know that it can. If Texas were to get to the national championship, win the national championship behind Ewers this year, I think he could go into it as a preseason favorite next year. So that's one, Quinn Ewers. Number 2, Jaxson Dart at Ole Miss will be in year 3 in Lane Kiffin's system. We saw him get better from year 1 to year 2 in that system. What can he do in year 3? And then a guy whom you like already, John, we mentioned him earlier. For a non quarterback, I would suggest Oklahoma State's Ollie Gordon, who was, I believe, the only man to outrush Cody Schrader, my guy, this season. Or at least in terms of yards per game, I should say. There were some other guys I think that had played in or maybe got more yards total that had the benefit of a conference championship game. But Ollie Gordon and Cody Schrader were, for my money, two of the best running backs, the 2 best running backs, excuse me, this year. Schrader will be gone. Ollie Gordon comes back for his junior season at Oklahoma State. So of those 3 guys, Ewers, Dart, Ollie Gordon, is there one that maybe you like the best to get into the conversation next year?
Ewers, I guess. I mean, he's played well in 2 games against Alabama. Remember, he was hurt in the 2022 game. I think it was in the second quarter. He was picking Alabama's defense apart. I really like the way he looked down the stretch. So he's got a lot going for him already. Everybody knows who he is, and his reputation could only be enhanced by doing well in the playoff. As a running back and a non-quarterback, I do like Ollie Gordon. I voted him first and Cody Schrader second for the Doak Walker Award. Uh, Thought he was a little bit more of a maybe a long ball threat. But both running backs are really good, and so I really like Gordon going into next season. But I don't think a running. Let's be realistic, Blake. I mean, a running back is a long shot. He's going to have to. He would have to have the equivalent of the stat season that Jayden Daniels had at a quarterback. And remember, Jayden Daniels almost looked at as sort of a pseudo running back, and he rushed for over 1,000 yards, I think. So you have Jayden Daniels. Uh, his stats were impossible to ignore. I think you'd have to have a running back have stats that were just off the charts, historically outstanding, need to average maybe 200 yards a game. As preposterous as that might sound, I think that's what it would take to sway voters. Like, how can we ignore what this guy's doing?
Yeah, you have to go back to Derrick Henry in 2015 to find the last running back who won this award. And then before that, it was another Alabama running back, Mark Ingram, all the way back in 2009, who won the award. And for another position player who's won it, in the last 20 years, you look at Devonta Smith, the wide receiver from Alabama. So it's like if you want to be a position player and win this award, you better be on Alabama. That's where you start, or your name better be Reggie Bush, who won it in 2005, who was just one of the more special players I think either of us have ever seen, and you've seen a lot of them. So yeah, it's so hard for a running back in this era to win it. And if we're just looking at history here, it's really those position players from Alabama that have the numbers and the attention to win this award. I think it's Ollie Gordon and Jaxson Dart are probably the two biggest long shots that we have on our list, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Jaxson Dart, if Jaxson Dart could improve as much from 23 to 24 as he did from 22 to 23, I would like his chances a lot better because his numbers are so much better. Cut way down on his interceptions. We've talked about him before off the air. I still think there's something a little bit missing from him, his game, uh, when you see him in the biggest games. I like Matt Corral at Ole Miss is when he was playing quarterback for the Rebels. I loved him as a quarterback. Uh, so I don't think he's at that level. Maybe he can improve more. He has some of the same qualities. If he can improve as much going into next season, maybe he can get into the running.
All right, John, let's since we just told people who's going to win the Heisman Trophy next year, it'll be somebody off our list of 8 names, surely. We'll change gears to the playoff, John. We talked about Alabama and Texas a little bit as it pertains to Jalen Milroe and Quinn Ewers, but we're going to save our picks for a future episode here. So, not asking for picks at this point, but just generally speaking, the more I look at this playoff field, the more I'm starting to think it's setting up to be a rematch between that week 2 game of Alabama and Texas. I think despite the fact that Michigan's the number 1 seed, I think Alabama got a really good draw with this matchup. I think they match up well with Michigan. A lot of what Michigan does, defense and run game, I think Alabama can handle a team like that. Don't think it's going to be easy necessarily, but I like Alabama in this one, and also with Texas. Like I think they match up really well with Washington. Texas is so good at the line of scrimmage. They got the playmakers on the perimeter. I kind of like both those teams. I'm leaning toward an Alabama Texas rematch in the national championship game. What's your thoughts about the field as you look at these 4?
Well, first off, with the Alabama Michigan matchup, when you look at that game, uh, go back to last year and the year before last when Georgia won the national championship. In each case, its strengths were similar to these teams' strengths in that it could, you think of it as a power running game like Michigan has, tough defense like Michigan has. However, it only won national championships because of Stetson Bennett at quarterback. He made plays. When plays broke down and when you needed a clutch play, be it pass or run, he delivered. Uh, I don't know if J.J. McCarthy can do that, but we've seen Jalen Milroe do it for Alabama, and I think that's what this comes down to. I think Michigan has a better offensive line and better running backs, but and the defenses are pretty comparable. So then it comes back to that quarterback play. J.J. McCarthy, I thought, played better earlier in the year, but the schedule for Michigan was easier earlier in the year. So he does have that. He has the potential. He can run the ball. I think he will really need to run the ball against Alabama, more so than he has all season. I think that will be crucial in that game. I know what Jalen Milroe can do. Michigan can stop everything Alabama throws at it conventionally, but what will it do when Jalen Milroe starts scrambling? That to me is could determine the game. And that's why I give Alabama an edge.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple teams recently have some running success against Alabama, but they were teams that had quarterbacks that could really get involved in the run game. So I think JJ McCarthy is going to have to be able to do it with his legs as well. We saw LSU, of course, with Jayden Daniels, put up a lot of rushing yards against Alabama. Auburn did it too, and despite Auburn's deficiencies as an offense throughout this season, Peyton Thorne, their quarterback, can run it, and he got involved in that run game and the Iron Ball, but overall, yeah, I don't know if Michigan has the punch, the offensive punch to take down Alabama. I almost treat Alabama as the favorite in this. You know, we talked last week about whether they should or shouldn't be in this, but I don't think about that conversation when I think who's going to win these games. Right? It's not a meritocracy when two teams step on the field as far as who's going to win. And so now that we can kind of put the controversy behind us. We can. I don't know that Florida State can, but as we just look at these teams and forget about who should have been in, shouldn't have been in, whatever. Alabama is in. I think they're going to beat Michigan. How about Texas, John? Do you feel like they're the favorites in this, or you still treat Washington, the better seeded team, as a favorite? You've seen a ton of Washington this year. I consider you our resident UW expert.
This to me is, I mean, I feel pretty good about the Alabama pick. Could very well be wrong. If you look at my picks record, you'll say, yeah, you probably could be wrong. That's what the analytics show. When I look at this game, though, I have to admit that Washington is better. I like Texas, and certainly with what I've seen, I would say, yeah, Texas should win the game. However, I thought Oregon should beat Washington 2 different times, and each time Washington prevailed. There's something about this Washington team in the clutch. It's unbeaten for a reason. It comes through. It's had a lot of close games. I think Washington, as much as any team in the country, is comfortable in a close game in the final minutes, and I think that really matters in these playoffs. So, I would probably pick Texas just because it looks better to me. But like I said, I thought Oregon looked better too, and I was wrong.
Yeah, Texas, I think of these four teams, what I like about them is on their best day, I think maybe the only teams that are better than Texas on their best day are not in this playoff. I think Georgia would be the team that comes to mind of if each team has their best day, I think I would lean Georgia. But of these four teams in the field, I think Georgia is better on its best day than any of these other teams on theirs. Now, I would say Alabama's close. Alabama's not always. I mean, heck, Alabama almost lost the Iron Bowl, right? But we've seen a couple times this year how good Alabama is on its best day against LSU. That was pretty close to its best. Even better though against Georgia. I think when those two teams are at their best, I like them the most in this field. Maybe that's why I think they're getting to the national championship. Is just I think they have a higher level of performance maybe than Michigan or Washington. But to your point, every time you count this Washington team out, they get it done. They're comfortable in those close games. I think that's important in a playoff situation.
Oh, I agree. And Michael Penix, its quarterback, is good in those situations. He's better than good, actually. Also, what I like about Washington, Dylan Johnson, a Mississippi State transfer, gives them a running threat between the tackles. It's not throw at all cost. It can slow down a pass rush because you have to respect Washington's running game. So I don't see good receivers, and its receivers against secondary Texas's secondary could be a plus for Washington. So I look for this to be a 41-38, 38-34 type game. And the other game will be just the opposite. So we'll get a nice balance in these games. I think you score 27, Michigan, Alabama, you get 27. I think you got it. 27 better not slow down when it's Washington versus Texas.
All the jokes about Texas, John, that have been able to be made for a decade plus, they're over now, right? You better have got your last jokes in on Texas. Steve Sarkisian has done a really, I mean, he's done a great job there. He he kind of rebounded his career as Alabama's offensive coordinator, and he's played that forward and has remade himself into a high quality coach again at Texas, and has put them back on the map regardless of what happens in the playoff. And we know they'll be in the SEC next year. I think they're going to be ready on day one, John. I think SEC fans like to believe that their conference has something special up their sleeve, that you step into this league and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, it's a different game we're playing over here. I don't totally buy that. I do think there's some unique challenges in the SEC. You don't get weeks off so much um, in this conference, particularly not the way it's going next year. How tough it'll be. I do think it's a great line of scrimmage league, but we've seen teams in the past come in and have success off the jump. Right? I mean, Missouri won the division in 2 out of their first 3 years in the conference. Texas A&M's their best performances ever in the conference were the first few years with Johnny Manziel, and I don't think it's going to be much of an adjustment at all at Texas. I think they're going to kind of be party wreckers from day one in the SEC. How much trouble do you see them causing in this conference next year? And I don't think Greg Sankey's ever going to regret voting Texas. Well, I guess he didn't get a vote, but orchestrating Texas and Oklahoma into the conference. But do you think there's going to be some schools around the league that quickly have buyer's remorse and think, why on earth did we ever agree to let Texas and Oklahoma into this league?
Well, I think the timing is great at the top because we're going to a 12-team playoff. And I think it will be hard if Quinn Ewers comes back for Texas with the overall talent on their roster to keep them out of the playoff, no matter what league they're in. So I think I'm not as sure about Oklahoma right now. We'll see what happens at quarterback. But I still like those two teams coming in right away. Nobody's saying, well, they're in the SEC now. Forget about them for the playoff. No, not at all. They'll be immediate playoff contenders. I would put right, just looking ahead to 24, I would have Texas and Oklahoma competing with Georgia, Alabama, maybe LSU as the top teams in this league. I think where they could really have an impact is in the midsection to lower level of the SEC. Teams that have been accustomed to qualifying for a bowl, every now and then getting that rare 10-win season. Those are the teams I think could be impacted the most because also you're doing away with divisions. And not meaning to pick on Kentucky, but I'll pick on Kentucky.
Sure, always
Ken-
welcome.
Kentucky, let's face it, has really benefited from being in the SEC East. Tennessee's been down for a while, has come back now under Josh Heupel. Uh, Florida's down, so you're kind of dealing with Georgia there. Missouri came up this year, granted, but there's been some room for mobility in the SEC, upward mobility. I think that will be very hard now. I think a team like Kentucky, it's going to be playing some of these West teams. Its schedule is going to be tougher next season. I've looked at that with some West teams in there. and you throw in an Oklahoma or Texas. You look at South Carolina, which now its coach Shane Beamer could be coaching for his job next season after a bad year this year. Look at Arkansas. Move over to the West. Arkansas, Sam Pittman coaching for his job. It's going to be harder because of Oklahoma, Texas. Oklahoma and Texas just kind of knock everybody else. I'm talking about the midsection on down. Knock everybody else down a level.
Yeah, and what struck me, John, as you were rattling off the names of teams is there's going to be a lot of good programs in this conference that are just fighting to have any hope for that last spot in the playoff. I mean, you think about it, yeah, that's 12-team playoff. That's great for programs like, Texas now that I think will be in with regularity. But, okay, so the way the rules are set up now for the playoff, we know they can change it at any moment, right? They've done that, but it looks like we're heading toward a situation where you get 5 auto bids and 7 at larges. That's, again, all of this is sort of changing by the moment in college football with the realignment we've had. But let's take it at face value of 5 auto bids and 7 at larges. So that already takes 4 bids off the board for the SEC. You're down to 8 spots that you can snag, right? And then you got to figure most years, I'm going to say the Big Ten, especially the expanded Big Ten, is going to get a minimum of 2 at-large bids for a minimum of 3 teams total in the Big Ten. They're auto bid plus 2 at-large. So that takes us down to 6 spots. And I'm not even sure you get 6 because I could see the Big Ten snagging a 4th. But let's just say you get 6 in the SEC. Well, you just rattled 5 teams there that I think is going to be in the playoff with regularity in Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, and LSU. Saying those teams are going to be in it every year, but I think a lot of years you're going to have at least a combination of 4 out of those 5 in it. So that leaves maybe 1, maybe 2 spots for everybody else to be fighting for. So it sounds easier when you think 12-team playoff, so many spots up for grabs. Well, if you figure the SEC is going to get about 5, maybe 6 bids in a given year, which I think is pretty reasonable, well, 2/3, if not more, of those bids could be sucked up before the season even kicks off. If we're being realistic about it.
Well, I think Tennessee under Josh Heupel certainly has a shot. When you take out those 5 teams we mentioned in an expanded league, uh, almost hate to bring up Texas A&M. It's almost like I say the same thing about the Aggies every year. Well, they have all the resources you need to win a national title. Oh yeah, one thing missing: a coach. Maybe Mike Elko will be that coach. Jimbo Fisher wasn't. But see, I look at on that net after those big 5. I would probably favor Tennessee. And then you look at Ole Miss, what it's done under Lane Kiffin. It's not what you consider one of the most elite SEC programs, even in the old league. But under Lane Kiffin, it's been really good, and it's been in the running. If there had been that many playoff spots available, it would have had an opening, a possibility of making it. So you look at Tennessee, Ole Miss, and then you got to think about a team like Missouri that came out of nowhere this year. See, Missouri, there's going to be one team, I think, every year, maybe, that's Missouri. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in that expanded, more difficult league, we won't have that long shot having that a season that really doesn't fit its profile.
No, I
But
agree with you, John. I don't. I think it's going to be harder to do that, but I think a program like an Ole Miss, a Missouri, someone who fits into that category, and Arkansas, even, that season, like a once out of every 10-year type of season where they're in the playoffs. What's interesting to me, John, is we didn't even mention Florida. That's a reflection of the way that program's been the last 3 years. But as we're rattling off teams that are going to be fighting and clawing to get into this 12-team playoff. Florida didn't even roll off the tongue, did they? But if you look at, programs that won national championships since the 90s, Florida's got 3 of them. And so I think they got to factor into this somewhere. I don't know that they're going to be factoring into this mix with Billy Napier. I think Billy Napier, we both agree, enters next season on the hot seat. So it may take a different coach, but I got to think at some point Florida re-enters this conversation as well.
Well, we've already established that I'm living in the present, so Florida, we'll worry about them later. I think at least we another team we haven't mentioned is Auburn.
Yep.
Auburn has, I think Auburn could do what Tennessee did. Tennessee, for just wandering around in the wilderness about 12 years or 13 years, bad coaching hires, but he's really come on strong under Josh Heupel. I think the program is in much better shape than it's been probably since the 90s now. And so it has the potential of a playoff team. And I think Auburn has a tremendous fan base like Tennessee. It also has that desperate quality of wanting to win very badly. And what does that do? That can fuel your NIL deals. It's good. Auburn. I think Auburn boosters will be willing to invest in the program now that Hugh Freeze is a coach and not Brian Harsin. So I think Auburn is a team with the resources to get in that playoff discussion more often than a lot of other schools. Florida, I think Florida's still in. I look at Florida's schedule next year. I don't see any way Billy Napier makes it unless you just say, well, we think he's building a really good program, but I just don't see it happening.
No,
And he's
I'll be ready to put Florida in the conversation for the playoff again. Maybe 2025, 2026. No, they don't get to be in the conversation next year. I'm not so sold on Auburn, John. Their schedule is going to remain a bear every year. I mean, right now they play Alabama, LSU, and Georgia every year. I think at some point the SEC is going to go to this 9-game schedule. And when that happens, and even in the interim, right now, Auburn's still playing Alabama and Georgia every year. If it goes to 9 games, those are going to be 2 of their rivals. They're going to play them every year. And I think we're heading toward, a situation where Auburn is a middle of the pack team and is kind of fighting to stay even in the middle of the pack. You mentioned Tennessee's wandering through the desert there for a decade plus. I think these are early days for Auburn's wander through the desert. I don't think they're ready to pull out of this. I mean, yeah, I think Hugh Freeze is. I thought he was the right coach for that school in the moment. I think he's certainly an upgrade over Brian Harsin. He's recruiting okay. Um, I just think it's going to be tough for Auburn to regain the footing, that they had there in the early stages of the Gus Malzahn era. The conference is tougher. Their schedule is going to remain one of the toughest in the conference, and as long as they're sandwiched in on all sides, you got Nick Saban on one side, you got Kirby Smart on the other, you got Mike Norvell. I don't think Florida State's going anywhere. They can remain a juggernaut in that conference. I think it's really going to have Auburn pinned in, and then as you mentioned, you got Tennessee. That had been a punching bag for a while. It no longer is. I feel like Auburn's going to be pinched a little bit, and I don't know that they're going to have much breathing room to reemerge here for the moment.
maybe the reason I like Auburn more than you do. I'm really conscious with Auburn. When Auburn's been good, it's been very good. In 2004, it was unbeaten. Should have played for the national title. Oklahoma was taken to go against Southern Cal, and that was just a brutal beating. Um, I thought Auburn should have played Southern Cal for the national title that year. Undefeated that year under Tommy Tuberville. Won a national title under Gene Chizik. Yes, it did have Cam Newton. A lot of teams might have won a national championship with him. And then Gus Malzahn in 2013, minutes away from winning a national title. My point is, when Auburn's good, it seems to really be good. It capitalizes when it has its best teams. It has a good home field advantage. And again, I just think that desperation quality of wanting to be good and not being satisfied with just being pretty good. And that can backfire, but Auburn is not afraid to make a change. It did that quickly with Brian Harsin. That was a smart move. So going with the history of Auburn and with Hugh Freeze winning everywhere he's been, I probably have a high opinion of its chances in this league. But when you start talking about that, it just kind of reminds me there's just not going to be much room for teams below the ones we've mentioned. I don't know if Missouri can do this again. Maybe it can. Maybe I'm selling Eli Drinkowitz short, but
Wouldn't be the
I
first time we've done that.
no, we do it religiously. And the same thing with Arkansas. I just don't know where Arkansas fits into this, how it's
And we
going
haven't
to.
even got to Kentucky or South Carolina.
No,
And
I
which,
think
yeah.
Kentucky's the glory days of the Mark Stoops era have come and gone.
Well, you can still buy the 2006 Music City Bowl DVD of the year Kentucky beat Clemson. I saw that selling online at Walmart recently, John. So if you want to relive the glory days, it predates Mark Stoops, but you can pick up a copy of that 2006 Music City Bowl as a stocking stuffer. We're going to talk more about the bowl games on a future edition. So check back in with us. And thanks for listening to this installment of SEC Football Unfiltered.